Welcome back. Well, now we take a look at the weekend's newspapers. And to help us sift through today's stories is Kyle Cowan. He's an investigative journalist at News 24. Kyle, thank you so much for your time. I'm looking at the City Press and I'm looking at the Sunday Times. Yeah. Pretty much the same story.
They both had the same lead last week, too.
Yes, absolutely. And, of course, the big story is the attempt to shut Agreezy up. The fact that Gavin Watson was prepared to go to extraordinary lengths to have this man withdraw his testimony. Are you surprised?
Not surprised at all. I am a little bit surprised that both newspapers carried almost exactly the same story.
Yeah.
It's almost as if someone wanted them to run these stories, yes, and they decided to do so.
Well, I mean, they were given, according to City Press, they were given the City Press has obtained copies of emails and text messages that detail the dealings, and the Sunday Times have probably got had the same.
So between
email to Agreezy from Bosasa lawyer, yeah, I mean, so.
Oh well, the story was shopped around earlier in the week, and we've erred on the side of caution with this. It's an unsigned document.
Yeah.
We've decided we need more corroboration on this, you know, and I'm surprised that these stories were run, but it's also not surprised at the end of the day. Mr. Agreezy's got a lot to gain by these stories. It paints him as someone who has a high level of integrity. I wasn't going to accept any money from these people. And now we understand why they were willing to pay him so much. If we look at his testimony over the last 2 weeks, it's been absolutely damaging for Bosasa executives and also for very powerful political figures. I think it's we can almost start referring to it as a watershed moment in the fight back against corruption, I think. We've never had someone with this kind of insight from the inside coming through to give us these details. But the 80 million rand and the 50 million rand offer, I think the stories miss some very key points.
Yes.
They sort of try and focus on the fact that he's going to run away to Italy as well in other stories in the papers.
Well, I thought it was quite, I mean, whoever picked that up did quite well. I mean, if his house apparently popped up on an estate agent's website.
Yeah.
And the Sunday Times then called him up to ask him where he was going, and it disappeared off the website.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that the house actually first was placed on listings in August last year.
Oh, really?
August, November last year. So this is not a new development. It's been up for a while. And my understanding is that his address was posted on Twitter. The he has to move.
Yeah.
He's no longer safe.
But the thing is, what is interesting is that a lot of the corporates that are involved in the corruption managed to kind of get away. I mean, we had Bain's CEO, the South African one, faking illness and fleeing basically to Italy. And, of course, Mr. Agreezy is in real danger. There was a security breach at the commission. So, obviously, he has to be kept safe. But, I mean, there's this expectation from people that whistleblowers must be good people. They must be nice people.
No, and you're not going to get that.
You're not going to get that. This guy is as sleazy as it comes.
If you want to get to stuff like this, you're going to have to speak to crooks.
Exactly.
That's entirely right. And you know, to have the kind of insight that he's just so... He sat at the commission and basically just told us in as sort of casual terms as we're speaking now, yes, I committed crimes. I evaded tax, you know. So I think it is very key for us to just keep this in mind whenever you read stories about Mr. Agreezy, especially surrounding his newfound fame and the houses and the cars and these sort of things. This is the lifestyle he led. We have to look back, and it's not the first time we've seen a figure like this making headlines like this and making claims like this in court or in a commission. And I think we just have to be aware that there's a massive ongoing fight between Bosasa and Agreezy. I think we have to be aware of that. When we see the things on social media and on these quasi-pay-for-play news sites, I think we do have to just keep in mind that they're at war. They're fighting each other.
Is it possible to speak to Bosasa? Are they talking?
They do seem to be talking here and there. Initially, the reaction was, we're going to wait for all the testimony and then we'll react. And now they do seem to be, especially when stories like this come out, then they do seem to want to give some form of reaction and say, oh, but the document didn't originate with us. But then their lawyers on the other side saying, yes, no, we're aware of it. It was never signed. It was never seen to fruition.
Why would the banks not be shutting down Bosasa accounts the way they shut down their Gupta accounts? I mean,
why are the hawks not descending on Gavin Watson's house?
This testimony is the equivalent of the Gupta email.
Absolutely.
Definitely. You know, and this is quite interesting. In that recording that was played on Thursday last week, you know, Mr. Watson alludes to this. You know, he speaks about the fact that, you know, whenever our loans with the banks and stuff come up, then they want to throw things in the press and then they want to damage us and it hurts our relationship with the banks. BOSASA has a very strange, sort of strained relationship with their banks.
Yeah.
And it's something they have to work on constantly to keep going. It's very similar to the Guptas. Remember, it took the banks many years to move on those Gupta accounts.
Yeah.
It didn't happen overnight. There was a lot of toing and
Yeah,
froing
but they've
going
had practice now. They know how to do it.
They do, but again, I don't think it's that simple. I don't think that the banks want to just start shutting down accounts, because then they would have to do that for several politicians as well, and then they start getting all sorts of pressure and meetings at Latuli House and ministers telling them what to do, and I don't think they want that kind of exposure.
Peter, I know that you've written your column on the EFF, and rather on the DA. And here we've got a really interesting story, the DA EFF head for Splitsville. What do you make of it?
Well, I think this has been coming for some time. So the closer the election comes, the more the DA tries to style itself as the clean party, and it is, relatively more clean than the others, many of the other big parties.
Or so we think.
Or so we think. But as part of that, it's got to name the people. It's got to name the ANC and also the EFF. There was a lovely tweet from Julius Malema the other day. You remember when some Vodacom shops got trashed by people wearing red uniforms? I don't know whether EFF or not. And Musi Maimane came onto Twitter and he said, "That's it, I'm not doing business with Vodacom anymore." And Malema tweeted, "So why are you still doing business with us?" and I think that's what's happening here. I mean, they're going to just fall apart.
Kyle, what do you make of this?
It's inevitable, really, isn't it? We're heading into May elections. We knew that this sort of romance between the EFF and DA was never going to last, and the ideological shifts are just too big. It was a relationship born of necessity, and it's coming to its natural end. I think it's going to heat up quite a lot towards May.
But I want to ask you a question here. I've got to ask it really quickly. I mean, coalitions are convenient, they're expedient. The fact that they differ ideologically isn't the issue. I believe the EFF get rents from the DA, and it's all about a patronage network. Shouldn't we be looking close? I mean, you're an investigative journalist. Glad Africa's contract, for example, a lot of what is happening in the Joburg city. There's a lot of work for us to be doing there, isn't there?
Definitely. I do think that we've given the EFF a far too easy ride over the years. We've done it with the DA as well. We don't really dig very deep into those issues, and I think we have to start doing that, because they're going to become more and more powerful politically as the elections come and go. And I think what we've seen over the past week, the Glad Africa tender was irregular. Whether it was corrupt or not, we don't know. We have to trace those money flows. We have to see. Because really, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about money. Elections cost money.
Absolutely. And nobody has it. The ANC is technically insolvent. Well, now that you've had your fix for the week, we will see you again next Sunday.